Let's bring in three members of Parliament to debate all of this. Rob Oliphant is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Erin O'Toole is the Foreign Affairs critic for the official opposition Conservatives. They are both in the foyer of the House tonight. And Tracy Ramsey is the trade critic for the NDP, and she is with me in our studio. Good to see you as well.
Nice to see you.
Mr. Oliphant, let me start with you. The U.S. Vice President is meeting the Prime Minister on Thursday to discuss the ratification process, both in this country and the U.S. How do you feel about him raising the abortion issue?
I think there is never a wrong place to raise the issue of a woman's right for her own reproductive rights, and that's if he chooses to do that, that's his choice. The reality is that our party stands very firmly, very strongly for a woman's right to choose and to her own destiny with respect to reproduction, and the Prime Minister will make those decisions on his own.
Mr. O'Toole, what's your view on this?
Well, look, we almost didn't get the NAFTA trade deal done because at the beginning, Justin Trudeau put a number of non-trade issues, his so-called progressive agenda, forward, and it took Mexico to actually get the deal done that we were added to, and none of those progressive priorities made it into the final deal. So Justin Trudeau has upset people around the world by often using his own political base and his own image rather than conducting diplomacy appropriately. So this is about trade. It's about enhancing the relationship. Other countries can have their own domestic debates. The abortion debate has not been a live one in Canada for well over a decade. It's, once again, the Liberal Party's own electoral fortunes is at the heart of this.
Tracy Ramsey, what's your view? Is he right to raise it with Mike Pence?
Women in Canada are concerned right now about our rights being rolled back. Mike Pence has spent his entire career doing that in the United States. It's right to raise it. But, you know, what Erin is saying didn't bear out in the House today. So today we had a Bloc member who got up, brought forward, a unanimous consent for everyone to stand and say that we, support the rights of women. And none of the Conservatives stood. So I'm not surprised that Erin doesn't want this to be raised with someone who has been the most anti-choice person in the United States for decades. What I'm surprised at is if the Conservatives aren't going to raise this issue, then why didn't they stand today and say to Canadians that we will not raise this issue and we support what is on the books right now?
Mr. O'Toole, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, because we're not into stunts, Peter. And the NDP and the Liberals are now competing for stunts that unanimous consent motions in the House are not even symbolic. The Supreme Court of Canada, I invite Tracy to check out the decision from 2 decades ago. I studied it at law school. Andrew Scheer was quite clear last week on this subject because the Liberals are trying to use the debate in the United States, which is gathering news and in some cases getting divisive, and the Liberals are trying to bring that divisive politics to Canada. We've seen it on immigration. We've seen it on other things.
All right, Mr. Oliphant, let me hear from you, and then I want to talk about the ratification issue.
Sure, there's no such thing as a stunt when it comes to women's reproductive rights. A Bloc Québécois member raised the issue today looking for unanimous consent. The Conservatives have said that they don't want to make it. They don't want to make it. Well,
the Supreme Court has decided.
She did have a very good point.
On the rights of women.
A party, the NDP, the Bloc, the other independents, the Liberals stood together with women, and we stood together, and the Conservatives sat on their hands. So that's not a stunt. I do want to raise the issue about progressive trade issues. Mr. O'Toole is absolutely wrong when he doesn't understand that we have absolutely won some very important concessions around labor, around rules of origin and automobiles, which are all part of environmental and labor. And those are very, very important points. We have made sure we got that.
Let me talk about the ratification part of this, because apparently not progressive enough for some Democrats, because they're possibly holding it up. They may hold up the process in the U.S. Congress. So what's your government strategy, Mr. Oliphant, for ratification? Are you prepared to ratify the deal even if the Americans haven't?
We've been very clear that we will be moving. We have a Westminster parliamentary process. It takes time, so we're doing everything that we need to do to make sure we are ready to ratify this deal in lockstep with our partners both in the United States and Mexico.
What does that mean? What does that mean in lockstep? How do you move in tandem
it means that
with the U.S. when the ratification of the deal by Congress is still so uncertain?
We know what we believe, and we understand that we have a good deal. It's a win-win-win deal. We presented a Ways and Means motion. I'm very glad the Conservatives were able to support it. I'm disappointed the NDP weren't able to support it. Today we introduced legislation. That takes time. We will have a debate until we get to second reading and have a vote. It will go to committee. It will go to the Senate. All of this takes time, so we are moving step by step carefully, cautiously. We're obviously watching what is happening in the United States. We don't want to reopen this deal. The NDP seems to think that they can reopen the deal at any time. We have a good deal. It's a win-win-win deal.
The Democrats think they may as well in the United States. But Mr. O'Toole, let me move to Mr. How should the government be approaching the ratification on this deal, given the uncertainty in the U.S.?
Well, what shocked me is they didn't reach out to us at all. There's about 4 weeks left of the parliamentary sitting. They didn't reach out. They tabled it in Ways and Means, and they don't even seem very organized in terms of committee, what's going to happen at the Senate. And they appear to be ratifying here first because Donald Trump has asked them to. So once again, it's Justin Trudeau basically doing what Donald Trump has asked him to without standing up for our key sectors. So we want to make sure that we will fix a lot of the gaps that are missed here in the next government, a Conservative government, we sincerely hope, much like we've done in the past with softwood lumber and a number of other issues.
Notwithstanding your concerns, you are going to support it.
It's not a great deal. It's a step back. As Andrew Scheer said, it's NAFTA 0.5, not 2.0. But we need certainty. Businesses need certainty. And when the Conservatives went down to Washington in March and started this push to get the tariffs removed, we made a commitment we'd work with the government if the tariffs were removed by May. The Conservatives met with more members of Congress on the tariff issue than the entire Liberal government. So that should say something. We want to work on trade, but the fact that they haven't even coordinated passage of the legislation shows they're making this up as they go along.
Tracy Ramsey, how should the government approach ratification here?
Well, first of all, I have to say that Mr. Oliphant is completely false to say that they're lockstep with the U.S. In the U.S., the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has not even put this on the floor of the House. So to say somehow that we're in lockstep, I can't comprehend why the Liberals are not getting behind the improvements that are being attempted to be made by the Democrats in the U.S. around labor, the environment, around cost of pharmaceuticals, and around enforcement of the entire deal. They are undermining the work that the Democrats are trying to do to improve it. And the Liberals want us to buy this argument that this is Pandora's box we can't open. Also false. In the States twice, and curiously when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker as well, they opened agreements in very limited scope. It made improvements. So I can't understand why they're going along with Donald Trump and Mike Pence and not fighting for Canadians for better jobs. And no one, quite frankly, it's incomprehensible what the Conservatives are saying. They're saying we're going to support the deal, but we don't think that it's good. Well, which is it? Either you stand and say this deal isn't good enough for Canadians, or you believe in it and you're going to get on board with what the Liberals are doing.
Okay, Mr. Oliphant, let me hear you on this.
Let's be very clear about who negotiated this deal. Who negotiated the complete elimination of tariffs on aluminum and steel? That was Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. That was not the Conservatives. That is what we did. We brought down the tariffs. That was done by this government. It was not done by either opposition party. We stood up for Canadian workers.
Can we say, Mr. Oliphant, let me ask a question. Can we say that we have the complete removal of the steel tariffs?
Absolutely. We have a 100% removal of the 25% tariff on steel.
The deal allows the deal calls for reimposing the possibility of tariffs if there's a, quote, meaningful surge beyond historic volumes of trade over a period of time.
And Canada can match anything that
it's not clear who defines what meaningful is.
Absolutely.
And that hasn't been settled, has it?
What we did was we negotiated at this time the absolute reduction to zero of tariffs on aluminum and steel. Steel producers and union workers across the country, coast to coast to coast, have agreed that this is the right thing to do at the right time. We've negotiated that. We are now moving on NAFTA. We are taking a Canadian approach. I'm not going to speak to the American approach. We are watching the American approach, and we are going to get this deal ratified as the Americans get it ratified.
Okay,
and there are many open doors as we continue this process, but we will continue to stand up for Canadians, for Canadian workers, and Canadian businesses.
Mr. O'Toole, is the tariff issue settled?
No, it's not. They ended up agreeing to quotas by stealth. As you said, there's a snapback provision with some sort of surge that's not been defined. So essentially they agreed to quotas like Korea did. Australia was exempt entirely from the tariffs. We had a proposal to make sure we were exempt from the tariffs using security because they were 232 tariffs. The government ignored that strategy and did a Steel Town tour saying the tariffs were never going to be imposed. They were for a year, and they hurt businesses. That's why Conservatives stepped up with a plan to try and get that removed. We said we'd work with the government, even though we have some serious concerns about the deal. Businesses want certainty out there. After the tariffs that appeared that Justin Trudeau said would never happen, after the uncertainty with the U.S. president, and the inability of this government to get a good deal, we need to actually just get some certainty, get through the election, and then we'll address a lot of these shortcomings.
All right. Tracy Ramsey, let me talk to you about timetable now. Even on there's this uncertainty in the U.S.
Yes.
And it takes all three countries, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, to ratify this deal. Do you think we'll see this before the election? Do you think you can ratify it before the House breaks? Rises at the end of June?
Well, the Liberals have a majority. If they want to ram this through and they want to, not go along with what the Democrats are trying to do and side with Trump in this pressure that they're putting on, then that's up to them. But this is a wrong move. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fix a deal that has cost us 400,000 manufacturing jobs. I'm an auto worker from southwestern Ontario. This is serious. We cannot mess this up. And if there is a chance that it's going to be improved in the U.S., those are improvements we want too. Those are improvements that all of the labor leaders in our country want. So we shouldn't be working against the good work that's happening in the States with labor unions and with Democrats to improve the deal. And there is no certainty.
Okay, let me hear quickly from Mr. Oliphant and Mr. O'Toole.
Nobody is working against any good work that anyone else is doing. Canada, our government is working for Canadians. We have the support of the unions, which Tracy is talking about. We have the support of auto manufacturers and the broad business community. We have the support of a former Prime Minister of Canada. We have an all-party team that has negotiated.
Are you concerned that it may end up that it may get reopened in the United States if it's not going to get through Congress with Democratic approval?
We can't control anything that's going on in the United States. That's not our job. It's a sovereign country. They will make their decisions. We will make our decisions. We will deal with this situation as it goes. We are being very cautious. We are taking the steps now, the Ways and Means motion, introducing legislation, standing up for Canadian workers.
Is it going to happen?
We're getting the work done.
Is it going to happen before the House rises, or do you think you're back here in the summer to deal with this?
That'll be up to the House Leader. They will work this out, and there's no intent to ram anything through. The reality is we will discuss this. We will ratify it appropriately. We will do this as we always do, as a good Canadian Parliament, standing up for Canadians.
Mr. O'Toole, you get the final word. Go ahead.
There's a provision they've already put in this agreement that allows their cabinet to make decisions about changing the deal, because they know, as Tracy said, the deal is still a live subject in the United States. Clearly, the President asked Justin Trudeau to put this bill before Parliament, and the Liberals are putting a little safety valve in there because they're basically just doing what the U.S. wants. We should have taken a strategic approach at the outset.
We're doing what Canadians want and doing it reasonably.
Let Mr. O'Toole finish.
We should have taken an approach based on our economy, auto, softwood, agriculture, right from the start, not the Trudeau progressive agenda. So we've been playing catch-up since the end. As I said,
supply management.
We'll support it, and we'll try and fix the gaps in the fall.
Look, we'll catch up again because I know we'll talk about it again. But thank you all for your time tonight. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.